And the last ones on this page is factoring the sum or difference of cubes. We could only factor the difference of squares, but with cubes, we can factor it whether it has a plus or a minus in there. So the process of factoring cubes. Think about your perfect cubes first of all. 2 to the third power is 8, right? 2 times 2 times 2 is 8. 8 is a perfect cube. 3 to the third power, 27. 3 times 3 times 3 is 27. 4 to the third power, what's 4 cubed? Should be 64, right? 4 times 4 times 4 is 64. 5 cubed. Happens to be 125. You might want to continue with that list, but you want to recognize that those numbers are perfect cubes. Notice I've got a 125 and I've got an 8, perfect cubes. So first thing I'm going to have is I'm going to have one set of parentheses that has 2 terms. I'm going to end up with another set of parentheses that's going to have 3 terms in it. So I've got one small one and one bigger one. In my smaller set of parentheses, I'm going to do my cubed roots with the same sign in the middle. So the cubed root of 125 is 5, because 5 times 5 times 5 was 125. Same sign in the middle, so I'm going to have a minus sign. The cubed root of 8v cubed is going to be 2v. If I took a 2v times a 2v times a 2v, I get 8v cubed. Now when I do my other set of parentheses, I'm going to do the first term and the last terms first. This and this are the squares of the numbers in the first parentheses. So I'm going to take 5 and square it. 5 times 5, 25. I'm going to take my negative 2v and square it. Now when I take a negative times a negative, I'm going to end up with a positive on that end, because whenever I square something I get a positive, right? 2v times 2v would be 4v to the second power. So that, if I took the 5 times the 25, I would get 125. If I take a negative 2v times a positive 4v squared, I get negative 8v cubed. This middle thing is what cancels out all the stuff when you do that big long foiling. The middle term is going to be the opposite sign in the product of the numbers in the first parentheses. So here, if I multiplied this, 5 times negative 2v would be negative 10v. I'm going to have the opposite sign, so it's going to be a positive 10v in the middle. So just for fun, if I FOIL that out, 5 times 25 is 125. 5 times 10v is a positive 50v. 5 times 4v squared would be a positive 20v squared. Then if I take the negative 2, negative 2v times 25 is a negative 50v. Negative 2v times the positive 10v in the middle would be negative 20v squared. Negative 2v times positive 4v to the second would be negative 8v to the third. Notice what happens. I've got a positive 50 and a negative 50v. I've got a positive 20v squared and a negative 20v squared. So I end up with the 125 and the minus 8v cubed. Not that you have to multiply it out to check it, but you could. So, just to remind you that if you're looking for my notes, if you go on Alex under the resources, there'll be one called A47, which will have my notes with all my words written in there and whatever. if you want to print those out, or when you get to that page over on the side it says Linda's Notes. But if you want to print them right away, they're under the resources. Factoring, difference of cubes. Got one short one and one long one. One that has 2 terms, one that will have 3 terms. First thing I'm going to do is the cubed roots with the same sign in the middle. So the cubed root of 27u cubed would be you wrote those cubes down, right? 3u, right? 3u times 3u times 3u would be 27u to the third. So 3u, my sign's going to be a plus since there's a plus up there. And the cubed root of 125 is 5. So we got 3u plus 5 in the front. Now we're going to do our first and our last ones. We're going to square each of these things. So if I square 3u, what would I get?
3. Nope, 1. Oh, next.
3u times the second 3u. That's what I do by squaring it, right? Would be 9u squared. And if I square 5, five times 5 is 25, right? Plus 25 on the end. So that if I take 3u times 9u squared, I get 27u cubed. 5 times 25 is 125. Middle term's what cancels out all that extra stuff. It's the opposite sign, and I'm going to do the product of those two things. So the product of those two things would give me 3u times 5 is 15u. I want the opposite sign, so I'm going to have a minus 15u in the middle. And that's going to be my answer. Go ahead, try number 18 there. Now most of these things we did in intermediate algebra. So I think this is a review. So cubed root of 64y cubed would be nope. 8 is the square root. We want the cubed root. 4y. By the way, on your calculator you do have a cubed root button. Well, sort of. It's the part in the yellow here. So if you do shift and hit the x to the third button, type in 64 and hit equals, what does it tell you? Tells you 4, right? We're going to be dealing more and more and more with exponents, so if you can start memorizing some of your perfect squares and your perfect cubes, it's going to make your life easier, but if you need to, there's that button there. What sign should we have in there? A negative. And what's the cubed root of 27? 3. So 4y minus 3 should be what you have in that first set of parentheses. Now we're going to do the first and the last term. The first term. What should my first term be? $16 y squared. Because I'm squaring 4y, when I take 4y times the second 4y, I got 16y squared, right? What should my end term be? What was that? 9. Negative 3 times negative 3 is a positive 9. That end term will always be positive because I'm squaring it, so it's always going to end up being a positive. What's my middle term going to be?
Negative 12.
What's my sign?
Minus.
Positive 12, because it's the opposite sign so that things cancel out. So positive 12y, right? Negative 4y times, or 4y times negative 3y is negative 12y. We have to have the opposite in there, so positive 12y. There it is. You can see that college algebra notes take you much longer than intermediate algebra notes. So try to get here closer to 8:30, or you're not going to have a whole lot of work time, or I'll give you some at the beginning. Our goal this week is to try to be 23% of the way done with your pie chart. So if you didn't do much last week, it means you got some catching up to do this week.